So this is going to be my tier list of all of the books that are in the Cosmere, all the way up to Isles of Emberdark, which as of recording this is pretty new out. It came out last week. And I'm going to be doing it in the order that I read them, so you can see what my reading order is here as well. And these are obviously completely my opinion. I'm not breaking them down from a technical level. It's just how I felt after I finished the book about how good it was or how bad it was. None were really that bad, so some were just not as good as others in my opinion. And I love watching these videos because of the comments, so make sure to put your opinions in the comments. Tell me how wrong I was, or if there's anything that you do agree with, that'd be great. I'm going to read through every single one. So let's get to it. And the first books that I read in the Cosmere were the original Mistborn trilogy, like most people. And I'm just going to start it straight away by putting the first one all the way up in S tier. This was actually the book that got me reading fantasy as an adult again. I had read fantasy as a teenager into a young adult, but I think I was 32 when I read Mistborn, and that's really what got me into looking into the rest of this Cosmere and also other fantasy books that I am now reading as well. So that is definitely going in S tier. It is a really fun book, which sounds weird to describe it as that because it's actually quite a dark undertone behind it, but at its core it is a heist. And I did really enjoy the characters in Mistborn as well. But going into the second one to me dropped all the way down to B. It was a lot of political intrigue and sort of war, but not really war. And it seemed to slow down a lot compared to the first Mistborn. The first Mistborn was go, go, go pretty much the whole way through, whereas the second one slowed right down. And I feel like the entire book really was just to set up the third one, which I know is quite common with second books in trilogies. They're just there really to set up the finale, but I really felt it with this one, and it follows a character that I didn't care about as much quite a lot as well, so that's another reason why it dipped down a bit. But then the third one went all the way back up to S again. I really enjoyed the ending. I see online that there's a little bit of contention when it comes to the ending. Some people do like it, some people don't like it. I really liked it. There was one character in particular though, especially early on in the book, that's just a little bit mopey, and I didn't really care for his storyline, but by the end of the book there's a nice twist and satisfying ending to his story. But yeah, throughout I was a bit like, okay, I'm sort of done with this mopiness, can we move on from that? And then the 11th Metal I'm going to put down in B. So this is a short story that is technically a prequel, so it's before all of these books in the Mistborn universe, and it follows a character called Kelsier, and I enjoyed him as a character, so it's nice to see his beginnings to an extent. But it is a short story. I'm not going to put it in S or A. It's quite, straightforward. There's no twists or turns or craziness in it. It's just giving you a behind the curtains peek into the character a bit more, so that can go down to B. And then next up, after finishing all the Mistborn stuff, I went to Elantris, which was Brandon Sanderson's first published novel, I think I'm right in saying that. I enjoyed it. I'm going to put it at the beginning of B, so I will be ranking these in order in their actual ratings as well. But I'm going to put this one at the beginning of the B. I really enjoyed the idea behind the magic system and sort of the premise of it. So the premise is there are these godlike people with silver skin, and random normal people will just turn into these godlike people. But then all of a sudden overnight, rather than being godlike people, they turn into like infected, diseased, disgusting people, and that's sort of the basis of the book, and I really enjoyed that. The big problem I had with Elantris was there's a reveal at the end as to why that happened, so why that changed, and I was just sat there like, surely someone checked that. It had been like that for years and years and years, and I was like, surely someone else would have worked that out before. It wasn't like some crazy convoluted reason behind it happening. So I was just a bit like, surely someone would have worked that out, which did sort of ruin the latter part of the book for me. And one of the main characters was just a bit meh. It was just sort of, a cookie cutter character that you could have taken out from a lot of books and put in his place. So that's why it's a B rather than higher, but I still did enjoy it. And sort of spoiler, I guess, for the rest of the tier list, none of these are going to end up in D, I don't think. Although, maybe, we'll see when I get there. And then Hope of Elantris is a short story that just retells the end of Elantris from someone else's point of view. That one's going to go in C. It was nice, but, I could have done with not reading it and still been absolutely okay. So, yeah, that's going to go in C. Right, next is Emperor's Soul, which I know is a favourite among lots of Cosmere readers. For me, I did enjoy it. I'm going to put it up in A, but I reckon it's probably going to be towards the end of A by the time we've got through all of this list. I did enjoy it. I like the premise. I do sort of struggle with short stories to really get invested in the character and in the story. So it was a little bit like I didn't get as enamoured as I've seen other people get, but I did like the premise of it. And this one I did actually struggle a bit to understand the magic system. I feel like Brandon Sanderson sort of does a good job at explaining rules behind his magic systems, but this one was the one where I struggled the most, and it took me a while to really get it, rather than some of the others where as soon as it was explained I understood it. So that's why it's going in A. I then did Warbreaker, which is going up in S between the two Mistborns. I really enjoyed Warbreaker, and before this video I was trying to think why I enjoyed Warbreaker so much, and I couldn't really think about one reason. I enjoy the premise that there are gods like walking among people and involved in the actual politics in the real world rather than up in their like deity realms or whatever. I liked the magic system, that was cool. I liked the character development. There's 3 characters in particular that by the beginning of the book towards the end of the book they're completely changed people, and I enjoyed watching that development as well. And in hindsight as well, obviously I didn't realise this when I read the book, but elements of this book do fill some of the other elements in other Cosmere books later on, which is really cool as well. So in hindsight, it made me enjoy the book more than when I just read it. And then I started the big series, Stormlight Archive, starting with The Way of Kings, and this is going up into the S as well. And I think it's going there, or maybe there. No, I think I'm going to put it there. Maybe I'll change it later. We'll see. I enjoyed this introduction into the 3 main characters. Throughout, there's no like really big plots, and they're 3 very separate storylines, but I enjoyed all 3 separate storylines and all 3 characters that were shown throughout. The world was really interesting. The beginning of the book as well was just a really good way to start a book, in my opinion. Got me hooked straight away, and I think it's just a really good start to a long series like this. We're going to talk about some of the other books in the series that I didn't think hit as well, but as a beginning I think this was a really good book. I then did Shadows for Silence, and I actually really enjoyed this. I know it's got a little bit of a split online, but for me it's going to go straight into A before The Emperor's Soul. I really enjoyed the fact that the main character was like older than a normal main character would be. It's not like early 20s. I don't actually know what age she was, but she was like an established mother. It was a really interesting dynamic of her trying to project her child and stuff like that, and the world was really interesting as well. It's very not much gets explained as to why things are, because it's just a short story, but I think that only adds the mystery. And there were some things that just took different turns than what I was expecting, which is really nice when a book does that. It's okay when books are a little bit predictable, but I do like, a couple of twists here and there. And next up is Book 2, Words of Radiance, and this is going in at the top of A for me, so I didn't enjoy it as much or as the books which are currently in S. And I'm not really sure people are going to like me saying this, but in Book 1 I enjoyed Shallan and where that took her, and then in Book 2, which is the book that is sort of focused around her and her backstory, I started finding her a bit annoying, and I didn't really get as into her as I was in the first story, and as I continue to be with the other main characters throughout the stories. And then I realised I think it's actually I liked her dynamic with Yasna in the first book, rather than just Shalon. And then in book 2, Yasna's not with her anymore, so you don't get that dynamic anymore. So yeah, I actually didn't really like her as much here, but some cool stuff does happen in the book, and it's still, a really good book. More and more world building that just continues and continues and continues throughout all of these books. So I definitely enjoyed it, just not as much as these S tier ones. Next up is Edge Dancer, and I'm going to put that in a high B. So when I started that book and I realised it was about Lift, I didn't really care about her in her interlude in Words of Radiance. Didn't really like her as a character, and at the beginning of this book I was still a bit like, oh, she's so annoying, I don't really want to read a whole book about her, even if it's only 200 pages or however long it is. But by the end of the book, she had changed. Her character had changed quite a lot, and I actually did like her by the end of the book. I thought the situation she was in and the story was actually quite interesting, which is why it's going to go in a B. It could have very easily been a C, maybe even a D for me, if that hadn't happened, that shift of me not really liking her as a character to actually enjoying where her character went. Right, next up is Oathbringer. This one's another S for me. It's going up here. I enjoyed Dalinar's story throughout pretty much the entirety of this whole series. So this book was focused on his history, which was really interesting to me. There's a really big sort of twist and ending to this as well, which was really good. It pretty much gripped me throughout the whole of this, and for these books, which are all 1,000 pages, to grip you throughout, it was quite an achievement. So yeah, I definitely liked it. Enjoyed Way of Kings more. Maybe it was just because it was introducing the characters and introducing the world and the story, but I still did definitely like Oathbringer. Now, Dawn Shard for me is going down in C. I didn't really care about Lopen as a character, which I know he's beloved by a lot of people, but I didn't really care about him as a character. Or I've even forgotten the main person's name, Rice, something like that. So I didn't really care about them as characters, and the story is just a bit like, okay, I could have done with not reading this, other than the fact it has a very big importance in the Cosmere. So obviously, you definitely have to read it if you care about Cosmere stuff, but I didn't really care for it as a story. I rushed through it, didn't pay too much attention, I would say. I just wanted to get to the end so that I could get back into the Stormlight Archive. So yeah, that's all I can really say about it. Now, Sixth of the Dusk is an interesting one because Isles of the Emberdark has now come out. But if I'm basing this purely on the story of Sixth of the Dusk and how I felt after I read it, this is going to probably be the first and I think only D tier for me. I didn't get the character. I didn't get what the story was doing. For like 85% of it is just him going through a jungle that is deadly, and that is it. His character didn't really have anything to him, and then the last few pages adds loads of intrigue and made me interested and invested in the story, and then it just stops. So that's why that was a D, but I'll get to Isles of Emberdark when I get to it. But when Brandon Sanderson had more words and more pages to develop him as a character and develop the world and the story, he did a lot better. But if I'm basing this purely off when I finished the book, how did I feel? Unfortunately, it goes down in a D. Okay, so Rhythm of War is going to go up in S, and I think it's going to go here for me. So it's going to go between The Way of Kings and Oathbringer. I really enjoyed Navani as a character, so for her to be sort of at the forefront of a lot of this, I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning more about the singers as well, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but just the dynamic and how the underlying narrative of good versus evil sort of flips a little bit. And, maybe you're questioning, actually, are the evil people as evil as it seams and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. There are definitely some flaws to it and some storylines I didn't care as much about, but I definitely enjoyed it, which is why it is going up in S. So now I jumped over to Era 2 of Mistborn, starting with the Ally of Law, and I think this one is going to A. I really enjoyed the introduction of the two main characters. The story was interesting as well. The way the book started, I don't think I've read a book that has started in that way before. I'm not spoiling anything here, obviously, but that was really interesting as well and a unique way to start the book. And there's some really good character relationships here as well. So throughout the book, people evolve and it sets up them as a character and the rest of the stories pretty well, which is why it's going in A. Shadows of Self I'm going to put down in B here. I think it slowed down a bit when it got to Shadows of Self. It had some cool reveals, if you want to call it that, about Era 1 in Shadows of Self as well. So it still was an enjoyable book, and there's still some more character development and stuff like that, but wasn't as good as Ally of Law, and it sort of slowed down a little bit. Oh, I've actually forgot about Elements of Jack and the Pit of Elanthia, if that's how you say it. That's going in D. Didn't get it. People enjoy it because of the narrating of it, because the person who's writing it also puts footnotes and stuff like that. I just didn't get it. I was like, I could have done with not reading it. I was a bit like, what is this? Why is it here? I believe anyway, that it was actually written for a game or something. It was like an excerpt for a game rather than it's supposed to be its own story. So, gonna let Brandon Sanderson off, but yeah, I didn't get it. Wish I hadn't bothered reading it. Complete waste of time in my opinion, but I know people do love it, so there you go. Okay, the Bands of Mourning, we're going back up to A, and I think we're going just before Ally of Law here actually. I enjoyed the continued world building even of Scadrial. There's some continued relationship changes, I guess, or it gets a little bit more in depth with the characters as well, and there's still some more callbacks to the first era, so I did enjoy that. Talking about the first era, Mistborn Secret History, I think I'm going to put it here in B. I did enjoy it as a story, and it was nice to sort of go back and see events of the first series from a different point of view, I guess you could say. And it was cool, especially after reading the Stormlight Archives books, to see some of the elements that were introduced there in the Scadrial world. I'm trying to use words to not spoil anything, but it was an interesting read. But yeah, B. It's going to be a B. Right, and then the Lost Metal. I think I'm going to put that one here as well in B. No, not actually. Let's put it up to A. Just behind. Actually, do I put it here? No, I'm going to put it here. Complete changing my mind there. I'm going to put it before all of them. I enjoyed the ending to it. I found it very satisfying for the ending of the entire thing. There's a bit in the middle which it sort of slows up a bit and it got a little bit tedious, but I like the ending. It's sort of similar to what I've said about the other ones. It's very character focused for me, and there's continued evolution of these characters. So it is going in A. Tress of the Emerald Sea. Once again, I know this is loved by quite a lot of people, but I think I'm going to put it in B. I quite enjoyed the narration aspect of it. I didn't really care about Tress as a character too much. She seemed a little bit, replaceable. Like, you could have put in tons of characters into her place and have an equally interesting story. And the story is a very straightforward, linear quest based story, I guess you could say. So there's not too many twists and turns and stuff like that. So very simple story. It was a nice story, hence why it's going in B, but, didn't blow me away. Ayumi and the Nightmare Painter, sort of a lot of similarities to what I just said there. I think I'm going to put it in here. I did enjoy it as a story, didn't really care too much about the Nightmare Painter character. I like the idea behind the fact there's two worlds and somehow they're linked, and there's this underlying thing that is happening and you don't really know till right at the end what is actually going on. There's just lots of mystery, but once again, wasn't my favourite. It was a solid B, I would say. Now, I think this is actually quite unusual. I haven't seen many people like the Sunlit Man as much as I did, because that is going in an S, and I really enjoyed the character that way. So it's a character that we've seen before in these books. I enjoyed that character in the books we'd seen them in, so I was glad to see them again here. I found the stakes of the book very high compared to some of these other books, and the progression and some of the wider Cosmere knowledge that you're given. I really enjoyed it all, which is why it is going up in S. It's very hard to talk about this book without spoilers, because it spoils a lot about the Cosmere. Now, Wind and Truth has been hated a lot by the internet. I don't think it was as bad as people said. I think I'm going to put it here. I understand why people were annoyed about some elements and not some other elements. The ending isn't really an ending, which is a little bit unsatisfying, because it's always been sold as this is the end of the first arc, but it didn't really feel like an end. It felt like it should continue straight into another book, but we're having to wait 8 years, I think it is, till he starts writing the next book. So I get all of those elements to it, but as a story, I enjoyed it. There were some satisfying conclusions to storylines, and there were some not so satisfying conclusions, but, after following the entire Stormlight Archive, I was quite happy with it as a book. So there we go. And then the most recent one, Isles of Emberdark. I enjoyed it enough to put it here, I think, which, after what I just said about Sick for the Dusk and not liking the character and all of that, blah, 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 after reading Isles of the Emberdark, I now enjoy Dusk as a character. I now enjoy the world. It's very Cosmere heavy as well, as similar to the Sunlit Man, which I did enjoy. You're sort of rewarded for reading all the books. There's lots of things that you read and you're like, that's from that, or oh, that's cool, I didn't know that about the Cosmere yet. So it's very satisfying because of that. But also the actual story itself is good. The character of Dusk goes through a really good evolution throughout the book towards the end. The side characters as well are quite interesting. I have actually done an entire review of this book, so you can go and check that out if you want my in-depth details, but I think it is going up in an A for me. Now, I have left the White Sand here, but I haven't actually read it or looked at it. It's a graphic novel. I've never really been into graphic novels, so I have steered clear of it for now. Maybe I will pick it up at some point, but I thought I would include it here and address the fact I haven't read it. So there you go. Tell me how wrong I am about what I think about all these books down in the comments, and what your views are. I'm really interested to see how other people view these books and my tier list here, so make sure to do that.